Ladies and gentlemen, what if I told you that the greatest wisdom doesn't begin in a textbook, but in fear, not the fear that paralyzes, but the fear that wakes you up, the kind that makes you stand up straighter, breathe deeper, and look at the world with a seriousness you never had before. Kind of fear that saves you, not enslaves you. Certainly, here's the expanded 500-word version of the speech, naturally woven around the idea that fear of God is not terror, but reverence, with a powerful tone, emotional punctuation like. And that motivational Jordan Peterson style delivery, without using his name and with no headings or formal conclusion. What does it mean to fear God? It's not about hiding in the dark, trembling like a child afraid of punishment. No, the fear of God is not terror, it's reverence, it's awe. It's standing before something so infinitely powerful, so deeply good, so profoundly just, that it shakes you to your core, not because you are about to be crushed, but because you realize you've been seen. Your soul has been measured, and suddenly all the games, all the masks, all the excuses, they melt away. We live in a world where people are told to trust themselves, follow their hearts, speak their truth. But what if your heart is wrong? What if your truth is a lie? What if you've built your life on something shallow, and deep down you know it? That's where reverent fear comes in. It doesn't shrink you. It wakes you up, it tells you, there's something higher than me. And I'm accountable to it. That's not weakness. That's the beginning of wisdom, because only when you admit there's something greater, only when you step off the throne of your ego, and you finally start to learn, you become teachable, you become honest. When you fear God, you're not afraid to confront your own flaws. You welcome correction because you know the standard is real and it's not you who sets it. You want truth, not comfort. People today confuse freedom with chaos. But real freedom doesn't come from doing whatever you want. Real freedom comes from living in line with what's right, with what's eternal. The fear of God brings order to your life because it reminds you there are rules to this game, and ignoring them comes with consequences. Not because God is cruel, but because reality itself has moral structure. That's why wise people live as though their choices matter, as though someone is watching, because someone is, and you know what? That weight is not a burden. It's a gift. It gives your life meaning. It tells you you are not nothing. Your decisions echo into eternity. You're part of a divine story, and how you show up matters. How you treat people matters. What you build with your time and energy matters. This fear doesn't push you away from God. It pulls you closer. It doesn't make you hide. It makes you rise, because when you fear God rightly, you don't crumble. You stand taller, you speak more clearly, you live more intentionally. You stop being afraid of everything else, because if your heart bows to something infinite, what in this world could possibly break you? So no, the fear of God isn't terror, it's reverence, it's clarity. It's the exact place where real wisdom begins, and where the real you finally starts to emerge. Let me know if you'd like a version tailored for video voiceover, with pacing cues or even background music suggestions. Absolutely. Here's a 500-word, emotionally engaging, professionally toned expansion centered on the theme, Wisdom Begins with Humility. It's written in the style you want, powerful, motivational, emotionally resonant, and realistic in tone. No headings or formal conclusion, just pure, moving speech content. Wisdom doesn't begin with knowing everything. It begins with realizing you don't. It begins with humility, that first, uncomfortable moment when you stop pretending to be the smartest person in the room. And you actually listen, when you admit deep in your bones that you have limits, that you're not infallible, not untouchable, not immune to failure or blind spots. That's where wisdom takes root, not in arrogance, but in the sacred space of humility. People chase intelligence, knowledge, credentials, status, but none of that matters if you can't humble yourself enough to admit when you're wrong. What good is all your information if your pride keeps you from transformation? Pride builds a wall around your mind. Humility, it cracks the door open just enough for truth to get in, and sometimes that truth hurts. Sometimes it shatters your illusions, but it also rebuilds you, stronger, clearer, wiser than before. Wisdom is not loud. It doesn't scream for attention. It doesn't need to prove itself. It moves with quiet authority. You recognize it in the person who speaks less but sees more, who doesn't need to dominate but instead chooses to understand. You only get there through humility, through letting go of the ego that tells you you've already arrived, that voice in your head that says, "I've got this figured out." That's the voice that keeps you stuck. Humility allows you to be taught. It makes you a student of life, no matter your age, your achievements, or your titles. It opens your eyes to the wisdom in others, the kind of wisdom that comes from pain, failure, history, or faith. The proud person looks down and sees only themselves, but the humble person looks up and sees everything. They see the bigger picture. They see how small they are in comparison to the vast complexity of life, and yet they don't shrink. They grow. Humility isn't weakness. It's the most courageous thing you can choose. It takes guts to admit you were wrong, to change direction, to say, "I don't know." That's real strength. That's wisdom in action. Because only the humble can become more than they are, only the humble are teachable, and only the teachable can truly grow. In this world, we're taught to posture, to project certainty, to act like we have it all figured out. But the wisest people in history didn't boast about what they knew. They approached life with curiosity, with reverence, with caution. They understood that to gain wisdom, you must first bow your head. Not to another person, but to reality, to truth, to the understanding that you are a work in progress. And that's not something to be ashamed of. That's something to live for. Wisdom begins where pride ends. And if you want to change your life, if you truly want to know, start with humility. That's the door. Everything else flows from there. Absolutely. Here's your 500 word expansion on the theme, accountability is strength, not weakness. It's written with a bold, motivational tone, powerful, emotional, and sharp, like something you'd hear in a high-impact keynote or a deep, reflective talk. No subheadings or conclusion, just pure fire start to finish. We've been told that being strong means doing everything on your own, that independence is the ultimate goal, that asking for help, owning up to mistakes, or being answerable to something greater than yourself is somehow a sign of weakness. But that's a lie, a dangerous one, because accountability, real accountability, isn't weakness, it's strength, raw, unshakable strength, the kind that builds character, creates trust, and shapes people into something solid. Something dependable, something real. It's easy to run, to blame others, to hide behind excuses, distractions, or silence. It's easy to point fingers at your past, your parents, your pain, anything that shifts the weight off your shoulders. But easy doesn't make you strong. Accountability does. Strength is standing there, looking in the mirror and saying, "This is on me, and I'm going to fix it." That doesn't break you. It builds you. When you take responsibility, you reclaim your power. You're no longer a victim of circumstance. You're the architect of your life, and that shift changes everything. It's not about carrying shame or beating yourself up. It's about standing up straighter, facing the consequences, learning the lesson, and moving forward, wiser, tougher, more aware. People fear accountability because they think it means punishment, but accountability is actually about growth. It's the only path to maturity, to integrity, to freedom. When you're accountable, people trust you. They rely on you, because they know you're not going to run when things get hard. They know you'll own your words, your actions, your choices. And in a world full of avoidance, that kind of person is rare and powerful. Do you want real confidence, not the kind that's loud and empty, but the kind that walks quietly into a room and changes the atmosphere? That kind of confidence is born in accountability, because when you know you're honest with yourself, when you know you're not pretending, when you know you've faced your flaws and kept your word, you walk differently. You speak differently. You lead differently. Accountability isn't just personal, it's spiritual. When you live like someone is watching, when you believe that your actions have eternal weight, you stop wasting time. You start living with purpose, you start aligning with truth, and you begin to rise, not above others, but above the version of yourself that would rather stay comfortable than grow, that would rather hide than heal. The strongest people in the world are not the ones who shout the loudest or dominate the room. They're the ones who take responsibility when they fail. who apologize when they fall short, who ask, "What can I learn from this?" instead of "Who can I blame for this?" That is strength. That is maturity. That is wisdom in motion. Accountability doesn't chain you down, it sets you free, because once you stop hiding, you can finally start building. You can become the person you were meant to be. One choice at a time, one hard truth at a time, one courageous act of ownership at a time. Absolutely. Here's a 500-word expansion on the idea that structure brings freedom. Crafted with a powerful, emotionally resonant tone that motivates, challenges, and speaks with deep realism. No subheadings, no conclusion, just pure motivational momentum. We talk about freedom like it's doing whatever you want, whenever you want, with no one to answer to. No rules, no schedules, no expectations, just total spontaneity. But that's not freedom, that's chaos, and chaos doesn't set you free. It traps you, it spins you in circles, wastes your time, burns your energy, and leaves you empty. Real freedom, the kind that leads to meaning, strength, and peace, only comes when you build structure into your life. Because structure isn't a prison, it's the framework that holds up everything that matters. Imagine a river with no banks. It doesn't flow at floods. It destroys. It goes nowhere. But with boundaries, that river carves valleys, powers cities, and gives life. That's what structure does to your potential. It channels it. It focuses it. It gives it direction. Without it, your talent goes to waste. Your time disappears. Your goals stay dreams, and your life becomes noise instead of music. But with it, with structure, you start building something solid. Something that lasts. Freedom without discipline is an illusion. You can't be truly free if you're a slave to your impulses, if you live at the mercy of your moods, if every day is dictated by how you feel in the moment. That kind of life feels like freedom until the consequences show up. Until you wake up one day, 10 years down the road, and realize you've gone nowhere. Structure gives you the power to choose something bigger than now. It gives you space to think long term, to commit, to grow. You want to be creative, you need structure. You want to be powerful, you need routine. You want peace of mind, you need order. That doesn't mean becoming rigid or robotic. It means building habits that support your highest goal. It means knowing what you value and designing your life around those values. And yes, it means saying no to distractions. It means showing up even when it's not convenient, but that's not loss, that's freedom. Freedom to become the kind of person you admire, freedom to show up strong for the people you love, freedom to know deep down that your life is moving forward with intention. Structure is what protects you from regret, from living reactive, from wasting time on things that don't matter. It gives you the foundation to build confidence, because when you keep your word to yourself, when you follow through, when you do what's right instead of what's easy, you begin to trust yourself. You begin to respect yourself, and that internal alignment, that's real freedom. The world will try to tell you that rules are cages, that schedules are suffocating, that discipline is a burden, but that's a lie. The people living with vision, peace, and power, they know the truth, they've built structure, they've taken control, and because of that, they're free. Absolutely. Here's a 500-word powerful expansion on the theme truth is not subjective, delivered with that grounded, emotionally charged motivational tone. No subheadings, no conclusion, just pure straight talk with conviction. We live in a world that keeps whispering in our ears, "Live your truth." As if truth bends and stretches to fit our feelings, as if reality rearranges itself to suit our preferences. But the truth is not subjective. It doesn't care how you feel about it. It doesn't bow to your opinions. It doesn't shift because it's inconvenient or uncomfortable. Truth is what remains when everything else falls apart. It's the foundation, the line in the sand, the voice that speaks even when everyone else is silent. You don't invent truth, you discover it. You uncover it in discipline, in suffering, in study, in silence, and sometimes it shatters everything you thought you knew. Sometimes it wrecks your pride, but that's what truth does. It confronts. It challenges, it cuts deep, and if you're willing to face it, it will rebuild you stronger, clearer, cleaner. People fear truth because it demands change. It doesn't flatter. It doesn't entertain. It demands you rise. And it doesn't apologize for it. You can pretend that wrong is right and right is wrong, and sure, you can get away with that for a while. You can dress it up in nice words and social approval, but truth doesn't blink. It just waits, and sooner or later, reality catches up, because there's a moral structure to life, and whether you believe in it or not, it works on you. There's a cost to living in denial. You feel it in your anxiety, in your relationships, in your sleepless nights and quiet regrets. The weight builds up, and you can distract yourself. You can keep running, but deep down you know. You know when you're lying to yourself. You know when you're hiding, and that's the thing. The truth never leaves you alone. It keeps knocking. It keeps showing up in the cracks. It doesn't go away. It waits to be faced. Subjective truth might make you feel good for a moment. It might comfort you, make you feel powerful, even righteous. But real truth, it humbles you. It brings you to your knees before it ever lifts you up. But when it does, when you stop twisting, stop performing, stop pretending, you're finally free. Not comfortable, not easy, but free. There's no strength in building your life on what's convenient. You don't find meaning in what's popular. You find it in what's true, in what endures, and the people who stand for that. They might be misunderstood. They might be mocked, but they're unshakable, because when everything falls apart, truth is what they're standing on, and that's what gives them peace. That's what gives them power. Truth isn't a mirror of your desires. It's a window into reality. And the sooner you choose to live by it, the sooner your life stops being an illusion and starts becoming real. Absolutely. Here's the 500-word expansion on stand in awe, not arrogance, written with emotional gravity and motivational force. It's reflective, real, and rooted in strength. No subheadings, no conclusion, just full momentum from start to finish. There's something powerful that happens when you realize you are not the center of the universe. When you step back and truly take in the scope of life, the depth of time, the weight of history, the complexity of the human soul, and the unfathomable mystery of existence, it humbles you. It brings you to a place where arrogance simply can't survive. That's where you're supposed to stand, not on a pedestal, but in awe of what's greater than you. In awe of what you don't understand, in awe of the fact that you even exist. But arrogance blinds us. It convinces us we already know, that we've figured it out, that our experience is the standard, that our opinion is gospel. Arrogance turns people inward and upward at the same time, puffing them up while shrinking the world around them. It kills curiosity, it suffocates gratitude, and worst of all, it puts you in direct conflict with truth. Because truth is never found in the prideful clenched fist. It's found in the open hand, the quiet heart, the posture that says, "Teach me." We've made it fashionable to act like gods, to speak like we're infallible, to move like we're untouchable. But deep down, every soul knows we're fragile, we're finite, we're here for a breath and gone. And that's not something to fear, it's something to revere. That's where the awe begins. Because when you stop needing to be in control of everything, when you stop pretending you're bigger than life, you make space for something sacred. You make space for wisdom to enter, for perspective to shift, for growth to begin. Arrogance will make you loud, but awe will make you still, and sometimes silence is where the greatest strength lies. The people who walk in awe don't need to prove themselves. They don't tear others down just to feel tall. They don't fill every quiet moment with noise. Instead, they lean in, they wonder, they listen. They carry a kind of strength that doesn't shout. It radiates because it's not based on ego. It's rooted in reverence. Stand in awe of what you've been given, of the life that pulses through you, of the time you still have, of the chances you didn't deserve but were given anyway. Stand in awe of truth, of beauty, of pain that taught you something real. Stand in awe of how small you are and how much that smallness still matters. And from that place, not weakness but wonder, you'll find a different kind of confidence, a deeper one that doesn't rise from pride but from purpose. Arrogance hardens your heart, awe cracks it open. And in that opening, light gets in. That's where the transformation happens. That's where the real journey begins, not when you try to be above everything, but when you finally learn to bow before what is greater.